Welcome to episode 39 of the DissContent Podcast. This week we had Rahul Desai from Film Companion with us to talk about sports documentaries, and it was a really fun chat, as it anytime is when you're talking about sports. We specifically spoke about The Last Dance, Fire in Babylon, and some more films. For those of you listening on SoundCloud or Spotify or Stitcher, please, I would recommend going on to YouTube and watching the episode instead, because the audio quality might not do justice to the episode. Also, while you're on our YouTube channel, please do click subscribe, as it really helps us out. In addition to that, in the past few episodes, we've asked you guys to send us a mail if you want to be added to the DissContent WhatsApp group, where we can discuss films and just create a community to talk about films and other pop culture stuff. So if you'd like to be added to it, please mail me on aditya9624@gmail.com. That's ADITYA9624@gmail.com, with the subject line that reads WhatsApp group for DissContent. So far we have only received about 4 to 5 emails, and we'd like to get to at least around 10 before we start the WhatsApp group. So if you've already sent in the mail, please be patient. We will form the WhatsApp group soon as we have the members, which make up enough of a number that we can have a real discussion. With that, I'll let you listen to the episode.
Chalo.
Let's start.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is episode 39 of the DissContent Podcast, and after a very long time, we've had a guest on the podcast. This is we've got Rahul Desai from Film Companion. He's a film critic. I'm pretty sure if you're here, you will know Rahul Desai. So I don't think we need to introduce him any further. The subject we've decided is sports documentaries. And I just off the bat, I just want to know, are all of us sports fans? Like, I'm a big cricket fan and basketball lately, but yeah, Bharat,
Cricket for sure.
yeah,
Cricket for sure.
Himanshu, do you give a shit about any sport?
No,
No.
Yeah,
never. I don't think I've ever seen any sport, any match of any sport in its entirety.
You're literally the first person I've met.
Yeah, that's so good.
clearly Himanshu is the ideal person for this discussion. But this is a good thing. We should get a non-sports perspective also. Rahul, what about you?
I'm a huge sports nut, like more than films, arguably. In fact, like different points, at some point in my life, my career choice was between like sports writing and film writing. Obviously, I chose film writing, but in hindsight, I keep thinking, okay, अगर sports चुना होता तो मैं cricket tours पे जा रहा होता. I would have been going to all the tours and being like a proper sports journalist. But I'm heavily into like cricket, tennis, bit of football, bit of F1. I'm not too much into basketball, which is why even Last Dance was such an eye opener for me.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I
I
saw
think
I saw a video of you. I think I'm not sure, but was it a Roger Federer video you were a part of? Yeah. I was part of a fan tribute, Indian fan tribute to Roger Federer. I think made a couple of years ago. So yeah, a lot of people who know me know this first about me, that I'm a huge Roger Federer fan. So whenever any Grand Slam or any match featuring him is going on, I get a lot of messages as if I'm his coach, or as if I'm sitting in his box and watching him. But huge tennis fan, which is why I'm a little I'm not very happy about the fact that we don't get to see a lot of tennis documentaries as such. It's mostly like Bog versus McEnroe and all. But I'm yet to see something solid on a non-fiction front when it comes to
just
that.
a slight deviation. Have you read that the most popular that biography, Open?
Yeah, obviously.
Have you read Open? Yeah, that was great, dude. I read like when I think I was in like 8th grade or something. It was insane. Like, it was really
Yeah,
great.
it's it's written so well. It's it's very easy to dismiss sports biographies saying story, it's a extraordinary life, but it's just written with such skill that it's clearly one of my favorite sports books. I read a lot of sports books. I don't read books in general. I don't read fiction. I don't read I don't read like any other film related books or anything, but I read a lot of biographies because sports for me is such a it's sort of a heightened or the best version of life. So that's why I keep watching a lot of sports, and sports documentaries is the best kind of filmmaking also.
Yeah, that before we just move on to the discussion of the films at hand, I just want to recommend off the bat your review of Last Dance. Those of you who've seen Last Dance, because I love how that review starts, where you're, I think, talking about the numericalization of life which you see in
Yeah.
sports. It's a really great review. I think let's start off with Fire in Babylon, because I think that's, first though it's cricket, so it's relatable for everybody, and second, like I think all of us have seen Fire in Babylon. Himanshu, have you seen it? I know you were. अच्छा देख लिया
Yeah,
तूने?
I saw it. I saw it.
सही
I
है,
watched it today.
Okay, great. So, those of you who haven't seen Fire in Babylon, please, it's available on YouTube. I don't know if it's legal or not, but yeah, just watch it on YouTube. That's where I watched it. So, anybody want to give first impressions on what do you guys think of that documentary? Or actually, wait, I'll just set the context. So, basically, the film is about the West Indies cricket team from, I think, 77 cricket team, no, the bowling,
Yeah.
where basically they dominated the bowling
Yeah.
arena, especially Michael Holding, etc. It's about that team and how they, and also about how, about the politics in the Caribbean and the entire racial context around the West Indies team. So yeah, anyone wants to go first on Fire in Babylon?
Yeah, I
Like,
can go first, I guess.
go for it. Go for it.
Yeah. I think Fire in Babylon for me, I mean, it released, I think it came out in 2010 or something. I watched it almost immediately, illegally, obviously. And back then, at least as far as I noticed, even though social media wasn't as big as is today, 10 years ago, I felt like it was the one sports documentary that made like a proper global splash. And even in India, it became a huge deal because not a lot of us were used to watching documentaries about cricket. It was arguably the first mainstream documentary about the sport, like something that everyone got on board. And it was because it was the digital era and all, everyone started sort of partaking in the discourse, in the conversation. And, uh, and as it turns out, my favorite cricket team since I was a kid was West Indies. I don't know why, you just suddenly start watching a sport and you just take to a certain team.
After India, obviously,
Yeah.
I'm not anti-national. I'm just confirming. Okay, yes, this is required as proof later. But after India, it was always West Indies, and I genuinely think it's something to do with, just like how they were the most athletic team after, like, beyond anybody else, right? Like Australia comes to mind, but West Indies cricketers were taller than everybody else. Clearly, were more stronger than everybody else.
It's also it's also interesting because in the era that we were all like generally part of, West Indies wasn't the most dominating team, right?
Right. It was their downfall time at that around that time.
Exactly. Unfortunately, when as soon as I started following cricket in the 90s, West Indies started sort of sliding down, the gaze. But I think I just took to West Indies because even it has a lot to do with the fact that I think you grow up in households that sort of watch 70s and 80s cricket a lot, and because of that, they pass on the history to you. My father, I think he used to actually have tapes of the West Indies teams of the 70s and 80s. So he used to show it to me, the 75 and 79 World Cup, which is why I guess I sort of took to West Indies very naturally. In fact, the only time I cried while watching cricket through the 90s and through the 2000s, like obviously being Indian, you are naturally an Indian cricket fan, but I've never really cried when they've sort of crashed out of a World Cup. But when West Indies crashed out of the 96 World Cup against Australia in the semi-final, that's when I cried. And that was my first experience of heartbreak in any sport. So for me, Fire in Babylon was it was almost a natural culmination of sort of me following a team, not when they were at their glory years, but when they were, and for me, my favorite ever cricketer was Brian Lara, even though he played in a failing team for most of his. If you ask me about Sachin versus Lara, I used to have physical fights with people in school. Think to Sachin ki baat hi mat kar, Lara is just where it's at. that is where you're supposed to be at. So yeah,
You know, growing up with Sachin fandom, and I grew up in Bombay, so I feel like it was a lot more heightened over here. So like growing up with Sachin fandom was insane because there was always one kid like you, Rahul, in every class, which was like, fuck Sachin, Dravid is amazing, or some other
Dravid.
player is amazing. Like it
I-
was all that was always a dude. You know, my
Aman,
first
actually, he looks like a guy who supports Dravid, by the way.
my first memory of tears, like literal, you know, not just crying, but like real tears, like flowing down your cheek is 2003 World Cup Australia final with India.
Oh my
That
God.
was
yeah,
it. Still fucking hurts me, man, because I still remember. Acha, anyway, fuck it. So coming back to Fire in Babylon, Himanshu, you wanna go next?
Yeah, so I'll talk about the craft of the documentary because
yeah,
I don't have the thing. I really like that the documentary started off from the beginning of the sport itself, so that at least I can follow it. At least a person who doesn't watch sports can, still follow the documentary. And I enjoyed it so much because not only was it informative, but it was really funny. And I was laughing with every scene. And then when the West Indies team were talking about how they started, patching up the England team, that's when I think I got really hooked into it. I think it was hilarious. And I was laughing on my bed, right? I was watching there only. And I was just laughing out loud. I couldn't control my. I think it was a really, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even it's interesting that Rahul you mentioned India because in that documentary, if I remember correctly, the first time that team played India, India abandoned the match or something. No, they were like, "Fuck this, we're
declared
not."
they declared a 12 or something in the second innings. It's a bit funny.
So, which is insane. They bought in that law of like two above the this thing, right?
Yeah,
After that team is actually kind of ridiculous. I personally felt the documentary, you know, it gave a lot more context to cricket and world cricket that I think cricket has been lacking. Like growing up, we've been watching cricket, but it never sort of manages to rank up to something like a football, right? And the worldwide fandom that say football has any corner of the world, but cricket is very in pockets of basically the Commonwealth, right?
yeah,
So what to me, what Fire and Babylon did was give it such a great kind of a context on a world scenario. Like you were saying, you know, it like I feel like anyone can watch Fire and Babylon and then get interested in cricket
Yeah.
as a sport rather than only for cricket fans. Like I'm sure other documentaries are there too.
And,
I yeah, Bharat, go on.
and a sort of interesting thing that I took away from the movie also, like even if an outsider or somebody who doesn't know the game, basically the history of cricket is steeped in colonization, right?
Hmm.
How basically teams like India, even other subcontinental teams, Sri Lanka, India, Pakistan, and West Indies,
yeah,
basically reclaimed something that was inherently British and gentlemanly. So I think that in a way it's very interesting opportunity to study a team like West Indies at a time that it was at its peak, and
Right.
for that to be a microcosm of how the game developed, right, and how the game flourished. So
yeah,
I personally
exactly.
found that like because it's the best thing to show to a non-cricket fan ki this is what cricket is, and
Yeah.
these are the roots of cricket.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
that was
And
huge.
Uh,
Yeah.
while I was watching it, I was constantly thinking that if there was a documentary based on the history of Indian cricket, and if it was made like this documentary, I would actually want to watch it to start watching cricket right now so that I can start following regular cricket.
hmm.
And I think there is a hole in, in, I don't know, where like there needs to be more information about the history of Indian cricket as well, right? Which
Yeah.
should come out in the mainstream.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I think you are an anomaly though over here because I think most people are like very clued in. But you know, it's very interesting because nowadays a lot of sports, like for example, F1 Drive to Survive got me into watching a little bit of
oh yeah,
Formula One, and I got bored very quickly because I'm like, dude, if the same guy is gonna win every single race, it's kind of annoying to watch after a point. Like कितना मैं देख लूँगा कि fourth place or third place के लिए क्या हो रहा है मतलब after a point it just becomes kind of repetitive and this thing. So
that's the F1 one is a good example because it's actually a very rare instance of the documentary being better than the sport itself in the
right.
sense, because a lot of us used to follow F1 in the 90s and all. Like I was a hardcore sort of F1 fan, 90s and 2000s, and I switched off the sport as soon as
Right.
sort of the Schumacher era ended and the Ferrari era ended. I stopped watching. But this F1 Drive to Survive made me start watching a little bit of it again. But it's boring as hell to watch as a sport even now. I just sort of keep hoping the season keeps happening. Like right now, because of the pandemic, I was like, I'll just keep having the races so that I can watch next season's documentary.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. There's a so the thing is, I also want to talk about what Fire in Babylon wasn't just about, the West Indies cricket team dominating. It gave like a sense of hope to the entire Caribbean islands, right? It gave them a sense of political and sort of racial affirmation about themselves, right? And I was listening to this News Laundry podcast a couple of days ago. The latest, they have this weekly political podcast called Hafta, and on that they were talking about how during the Ziaul Haq years in Pakistan, which was like a military dictatorship back then, the Pakistani cricket team carried the political class for the entire time, like on their shoulders, because it was like, because Imran Khan, I think around that time, was at his peak also. So apparently there's also a story where Imran Khan tried to retire and he got a call from from I think Zia. I don't know who was in power, but he got a call from the leader at that time saying that you're not fucking retiring, okay? And he had to say okay, sir. So it's almost interesting what sports can do in terms of bringing an entire this team together. I feel like India, considering a political scenario, we might be heading towards because Indian cricket team, I feel like now is too strong for their own good. I feel it's too powerful.
That is also actually explored in the whole BCCI
Death of a Gentleman.
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly. Death of a Gentleman is again
very good documentary.
Yeah.
Very good dog, and that's sort of, as a viewer and somebody who just enjoys the game, I really did not know this whole CCI mafia, but it's sort of, and the striking thing, I mean, for context for Himanshu and for other listeners who don't know this, BCCI has now become the most powerful cricket body in the world, and now it is basically calling the shots as to how the game progresses, and it's like essentially it's kept India at the front and center of cricket, and it's actually stopped it from growing into other countries like how it grew in India. It's stymieing its own growth chart, and that's sort of killing the game, as we can see, right?
It's really messed up, okay? Because I remember years ago, I think a couple of years ago, when I saw That of a Gentleman, I was talking about it to some family members, and I told him about how, exactly what Bharat is saying, that BCCI is doing this, and then the response was very interesting, okay? So they were like, for so long these guys have dominated the sport, now it's our turn. So it's almost like they don't see the point of the problem.
That's actually such an accurate reflection of how politics and sports sort of very perversely connect, right? Like, ये लोग ने इतना साल rule किया, अभी हमारी literally you can hear that everywhere. And that's what the best part about Death of a Gentleman is, because it's made by a couple of sports journalists mainly. So the thing is, because of that, it has a very journalistic and a ruthless gaze and a very investigative gaze. And you will not see a lot of documentary. Like, as we know about Death of a Gentleman, it was there were great efforts made to sort of squash the documentary. It never played. It couldn't play at a lot of international film festivals. It was played at underground film clubs. It was played because one of the directors is a cricket info journalist. It was played within the circles, within the sport. So because of, I mean, the three big boards, the BCCI, the English board, and the Australian board, were the first to react to this documentary and try to quash it. Like, as we see in the documentary itself, the press cards are taken away. Tactics happen. That's the reason we'll never see an honest documentary about Indian cricket. The gatekeepers only are such that people will, be eliminated if they even try to sort of get into the politics or get into the history of cricket for that matter. Because if you get into the history of Indian cricket, you'll realize how corrupt it's become compared to say 30 or 40 years ago when players were still a big deal.
Bharat, you wanted to say something?
I mean, it's interesting you brought up Indian sports documentaries, and I've seen two pathetic Indian documentary series. I don't know if you've reviewed them before.
Mumbai Indians, don't say.
Huh?
Don't say Mumbai Indians.
So one is obviously Mumbai Indians. The other is
Sachin
Srinivasan.
Nahi.
No, that's okay. I have not watched that. But Srinivas and this one, the Chennai Super Kings one.
Oh God, no! I didn't even have the guts to watch it after the Mumbai Indians documentary. And the Sachin one, so let's not get into. That's not a film. That's just a sort of a temple में जो worship idols.
Hagiograph, क्या है वो word? हाँ, वैसे कुछ.
But thing,
You know,
dude, Dhoni is actually defending himself against the whole scam that happened, and it's so paper thin. Like you can see, he's saying, "Oh, he used to be in our dressing rooms, but I'm the biggest proponent of cricket. I will never lie. I will never fix." Dude, okay.
I remember seeing those really cringeworthy hoardings in Juhu of Roar of the Lion or something with Dhoni ka kuch to tha. Yeah.
And the problem is, I love Dhoni as a cricketer.
Man.
Absolutely like his calm and composure and whatever. I'm the first person to fight anybody who says, what about the required run rate and how many times? I'm on the defense every time that happens. But I really can't defend this shit. So
no, we can have a separate podcast.
Yeah.
Dhoni thing, because I have a lot to say about it.
Yeah, before we move on, I just want to point out one more thing. You were talking about, Rahul was talking about the cricket and politics ka thing. On episode 6 of this podcast, we had Jaideep Verma, who is a documentary filmmaker. He's one of my favorite documentary filmmakers. And he has also done a lot of work in cricket, right? He co-wrote a book, Numbers Do Lie, I think. Bharat, you've read it, no? The book?
I've read it.
Yeah, I have to read it.
Yeah, no, I've heard a lot about the book, but I used to follow his work with respect to the website he had, or the system he had come up with.
Impact Index, right?
Impact Index.
Yeah, and I remember him saying this during the episode that cricket, he said, was the most political industry in the country. Like, you cannot write anything about even mildly which goes against whatever the norm is in cricket. So I guess it's also about the amount of money, man. It's just insane.
It is. It's like any other thing. The way we talk about films, that you can't like openly criticize certain film stars or certain superstars. It's the same in cricket, but way worse, because it's real life, and the BCCI has a lot more money than say the production houses here.
I was actually a little curious, and I want to deviate a little bit from the sports discussion, since you've been working as a film critic for how long now?
Almost 7 years now.
Okay, so like, I just want to ask you don't have to name anybody, but like, have you ever been on the receiving end of some, because dude, your reviews are really harsh, man, and I love reading them. I think people should be, as somebody, all three of us also are aspiring filmmakers as well. And I think that's a good thing. It's always good to be harsh on films. So have you ever been on the back end? Have you ever received any midnight calls or some shit about
I haven't like received threats or midnight calls and all, but I've heard enough like of a lot of people having a problem with, the way I go about critiquing films. I mean, I don't think I'm as harsh as I was a couple of years ago, but I'd say I'm just honest about like a lot of stuff that goes on, a lot of shit that goes on.
Right.
And sure, like I do get a lot of, hate tweets, or, a lot of trolling happens, but that happens to most every, half decent in this country.
Right.
So it's not like I get, like in the 90s, if I was a critic, I would have been getting like midnight knocks on the door and shit, and there's no doubt about it, given the kind of cinema that was being made in the 80s and 90s.
Oh man,
people in white suits knocking on the door and all, and you're finished next day. So I'm just lucky.
That was the golden age. That was the golden age.
Because you mentioned writing about cricket, and I just wanted to also talk about, I wanted to ask you, have you ever attempted to write about cricket in India, and have you ever been at the receiving end of anything, or has that been a domain that you've never touched at all?
No, I've never, it's given that it's not my area as such, because there are sports journalists, sports writers, but I do write about sport like at least 6 or 7 times a year, because for me that kind of writing is my release, because film writing is still a job in a way. A lot of times you don't want to write about the films you write about, but in sports I want to write about what I'm writing about. I've written about Kohli, I've written about the Indian cricket team, I've written about like Bumrah, I've written essays about all these players, Rohit Sharma. So that for me is a different kind of writing, but I'm just lucky I can still only write essays and not report, or not say or not like write match reports where you have to criticize a player or a game, because the sports journalists probably go through a lot of different things that even film critics go through. So I haven't faced any backlash as such, but I do see how extreme it is when it comes to the sort of social media following, the way people follow Kohli. If you say anything against him, you're finished. Same with Dhoni, same with a lot of other players. So it's no different. If for example, if I tweet about Dhoni, even now they were like, don't bother. You're a film critic. You have no right to talk about sports. That happens all the time. I was like, boss, I know more about sports than films. Who's to say?
And
Nice.
also, I remember Harsha Bhogle the whole incident. You guys know this?
Oh, that was fucking ridiculous, man. That was really pissing off.
And for the viewers also, I'll tell what happened was damn interesting and so fucked up. So again, fill in if you guys can recall this better. But who had tweeted something? Amitabh Bachchan. Somebody had tweeted.
Amitabh Bachchan had tweeted.
Yeah. The fact that, and so Harsha Bhogle had said that this match India did not win. Sri Lanka lost the match.
Yeah.
India did not win it. And Amitabh Bachchan shared saying that some people are not happy that India won.
Yeah.
And Dhoni just retweeted it, saying that nothing to add.
Yeah.
And the next day, Harsha Bhogle, next day or in the few coming days, he lost his job, dude. Harsha Bhogle lost his job because he said India did not win this game. Sri Lanka lost the game.
Right.
That's
Might I just add, Harsha Bhogle was the only decent Indian commentator while I was growing up, man. And the good thing is he was not a cricketer, so it's always nice. Because the cricketers were half the time they were just unhinged. It felt like they were, what the fuck are you even talking about? Like there was just very bad flashbacks of bad commentary growing up. So anyway, let's move on now. I think cricket talk can really go on forever. But let's go on to Last Dance, because it's not a sport I think that any of us follow. I started following basketball last year, since the past 2 years, a little bit. And NBA I think is starting today again, so I might watch the matches tonight or early morning. So, Himanshu, I think you've been quiet for a very long time. So, why don't you start off with your impression of the Last Dance?
So I think the best thing about Last Dance is that it taught me how to watch basketball. Like up until now, I had no clue how to read the scoreboard. So when I watched the entire, and I saw it, I started in the morning, the Sunday morning, and I finished it by whatever the 9 hours that it took me to. And I was totally in. By the end of it, I was like, now I know how to follow a basketball game, how to follow these people, and I think it was really fun. I'll just ask you guys a question. Apart from Michael Jordan, which other character is most interesting to you guys? I'll tell you mine.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mine is Scottie
Pippen. Yeah, definitely.
His voice, something about his voice. It's really deep and I really like it. What do you guys think? What are your favorite characters from the entire documentary?
Same. For me, it was Scottie Pippen. Even the coach Jackson, even to an extent Dennis Rodman, but he's like the comedian in the film, like as usual. But for me, Scottie Pippen is a good choice because he's weirdly philosophical and deep for a basketball player, and he's insanely self-aware about his own about the way he talks about the sport, the way he talks about his own legacy and the Bulls' legacy at the same time. Because for someone like me, I've never watched any basketball while growing up, and it's a very alien sport to me. And even I learned about the sport itself, or how to watch the sport, while watching the documentary only. I had a Bulls cap when I was growing up, but that's because Jordan was the biggest superstar in the world. So, for me, it was a very solidly made. I mean, there's one way to say hagiographies, and it's very easy to make tributes to certain superstars and all, but people don't realize that when it is superstars, when it's someone like Maradona, someone like Jordan, someone like Ronaldo, it gets very, very complicated to make,
Tendulkar.
or Tendulkar, as we saw it go wrong terribly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets even more challenging to make something so, so empathetic at the same time. Because even though I didn't learn a lot about Jordan the person, about his relationship with his father too much and all, the fact that I think I even wrote this in the review, that the fact that I was seeing him sort of dominate the way he did on the court, or go through those 5 years and 6 titles with the Bulls, come back again, win 3 titles. That gave me such a glimpse of the way he was as a person, or as the fact that he never participated in discussions about racism. He never really, because him by existing itself was a political figure. He didn't need to really do a lot of things. And I think the documentary, like, it was one of the only documentaries I was waiting for every Monday, because that's when the episode was dropping. So I just, it was great, because for someone who's never watched the game, for me, writing about it was a pleasure, despite not knowing anything.
What about you?
Last Dance. Last Dance. So I started watching basketball a little earlier, so I got a little more context about the history and the game and stuff, and all that. In fact, it was very interesting to watch. I did not know Steve Kerr was their teammate. Steve Kerr is currently the manager of Golden State Warriors, which are like one of the most dominating teams right now. Last year they lost, but which was like an upset or whatever. But it was very interesting, because from watching cricket to watching basketball, the first match I saw last year or last year, I think one of the players, he throws the ball at the board, then he jumps up about 4 feet into the sky, grabs it, and then dunks it. I'm like, listen, cricket is not a sport based on this shit. No, I have seen Inzamamul Haq not taking a single run despite the ball going to the boundary. This is not. After that, my entire perception of sports has changed ever since I started following basketball. So to me, Last Dance is like, it was honestly like watching which is why I loved Rahul's review, which was like watching the pinnacle of humanity in a way. This is what, if you perfect your body to a certain level, this is what you can achieve. And it was watching that at the highest level, at Michael Jordan's level, which is nobody's ever dominated any sport perhaps to that point. And it was really, for me, the best part of it was, despite the hagiography or whatever of it, it felt like, it like the documentary is not criticizing him much on a lot of things, though it does mention his iconic that statement of Republicans wear sneakers too and all that. So which, by the way, sorry for this thing, but that's a throwback to me to OJ Made in America. Have you guys seen OJ Made in America? I love that documentary. In that is a very similar scene where OJ in the 60s, he is sitting on a table of white people, and somebody said, "Oh look, there is OJ." You're sitting on a table with black people, and somebody was like, "Oh look, OJ is sitting with those black guys." And somebody came up and asked him, "Oh, was that's a horrible thing to say?" And he was like, "No, he saw the difference." So it was like, you see at a level where the megalomania in a sports star, and you can see that in Jordan. Maybe in a positive way you see that in Jordan, and in a negative way you see that in OJ. It is. I would actually recommend anybody who has seen Last Dance, make it a double feature and watch OJ Made in America as well. Please don't watch the other OJ documentary. I'm just sorry, but the Netflix one. Bharat, go on.
So I, full disclosure, I've not watched the whole series yet. I have watched about 2 episodes, so I'm not really one to talk. But I'm just taking off on a comment that you made. Like, cricket has never been an athletic, like sport until very recently. Until, I don't know. I mean, for me at least, until the South African team in the 90s, right? And I'm sure there must be more people before that, but it has never had the same level of athleticism as basketball, football, and others, right? So for me, that was the most interesting and exciting and exhilarating part about, because I've played, in a very amateur capacity, I've played a couple of these sports, and I easily found this one, basketball, to be the most physically taxing.
Yeah.
And that is easily and I swim a lot. For people who don't know, I really swim a lot. But I have never been as tired in like 10 minutes of a basketball game than in any other sport. So I think that I think even Rahul mentions that in his review, which is the visceral quality of the game and how it's shown is that was the most interesting part for me. At least till now, I've not really watched the series as you guys have. So that's all I have to add about it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
think.
go on,
Huh?
Himanshu, go on.
Okay, so I had an idea while I was watching that documentary. It's a little strange, but I was thinking it would have been better had Michael Jordan not been the documentary.
Yeah, maybe.
Because it's about everybody else's perspective of him, right? And then he's kind of given a chance to defend himself, but he's not really doing it for. It's like making a documentary about Jesus with Jesus in it. Like it doesn't. So I was like, it could have been, but I think it's really interesting. I really like the way it's edited because I think I won't spoil it for Bharat, but it's edited with the same teams playing over the years, right?
Hmm.
And that's probably more interesting than a chronological order in
Yeah.
which and it's probably very difficult to cut it. I'm sure the editor must have gone through hell
Yeah.
to make this documentary.
Yeah, like people are talking about the Nike ad, no? This is where they went through some photo. I'm like, dude, come on. Like, try doing something like this shit. It's fucking insane. But, it's interesting. I played basketball through high school, 11th and 12th. I was in the school team. And I didn't get much of a chance to play during that time because my school team was kick ass. But in college, we had this inter batch thing, and I played all 3 years. And it's the most scam thing we ever did because we were the only 5 people in the batch who knew how to play basketball. Forget playing well. So that was one. Second thing, all of us were smokers. Okay, so I'm telling you, there was a point I think in second year where we were playing a match against one of the other teams, and our senior team, no, I think they had a couple of them were playing in the university team, so they were insane. They were playing at another level. So I remember at one point we were literally begging the player who was on the substitute bench, listen, I am going to die, so you need to come on because I can't run anymore. It's literally that
That happens.
insane, man. And Last Dance again. To me, the progression of the way they've shown the season, sort of going on, and how Michael Jordan sort of creates and invents enmities and rivalries in his own head, because nobody in their right mind would ever go up to Michael Jordan and be like, I'm gonna fuck you up, so he would have to do it in his own head. So, and how that character just sort of like, to me, that guy is the best representation of a jock. Like, I've never seen a more jock than Michael Jordan. He sort of defines that stereotype for me, and I loved how they presented that. Like, he's so unabashedly cool about everything he ever did, that he really doesn't give a fuck. Like, I guess you have to like sort of dominate something at that level, only then you can get a, like, people can let you get away with all that shit.
Yeah, especially if you notice like the locker room scenes and there
Hmm.
were so many of them. Like he's just chilling with his bodyguards and
Yeah.
with his other friends and all, and you see a very different kind of Jordan there. And
Right.
like for me, actually, you know, I, even though I mean that's actually a good point about Jordan being in the doc or not being in the documentary because
Hmm.
you, because given that we were forming a mental picture of Jordan throughout the documentary, the narrative is actually obviously a lot of editors go through hell while making any documentary ever, because for me the editor is the main person on any documentary. It's
Right.
not the director. The director has the vision and all, but the editor really makes it. And
Right.
especially when it comes to when it comes to like documentaries about history and about
Hmm.
people,
With
and where you have
existing
to get
footage and stuff.
archival footage, and you
Yeah.
have to sort of just somehow make something out of it, just to even attempt a narrative like this, where one narrative is starting in the 80s from his childhood and moving towards the 90s, towards the starting years of the Bulls domination, and the second narrative is moving, upwards from the, towards his retirement years, is pretty insane. And it made absolute sense. It was coherent. And for me, that was the beauty of the documentary. If you actually sense the story within the editing or within what they are trying to say, not so much about Jordan's life, but about the way his career played out. For me, that was like watching as good as watching any fiction film ever. So it felt like a best of both worlds in a way.
Hmm. True.
And I
True.
also sort of have a general comment about not just sports, documentaries, but also films. I feel that there is a certain similarity in the way we treat sports and how we treat a war, like a battle.
Yeah.
And I think both can be compared both in fiction and non-fiction, right?
Hmm.
So that was like, that's something that I was thinking while I was watching this one also, because
Yeah.
it's structured like that.
And there is a tendency for sports, like I think this has been consistent amongst whatever sports stuff I've read, whether articles or books or even documentaries and stuff, that sports people tend to sort of use the analogy of a war or of battle or some a physical fight when describing even something like a chess, like that, because it gets very, it can get very brutal. Like I remember there's some line with in that open book by Andre Agassi, where he talks about how it's like in tennis, it's like you're two boxers. It's as physical as that, because it's just you two on the court, right? So that's really, and there's that whole thing about how sports can. And do you guys think cricket does not? I really feel cricket should in the future become more of a domestic sort of sport, like a club-based sport. I think that's how it'll grow a lot more. Because as long as it becomes nation, na, jab tak nation mein rahega, then it all becomes very. It takes a very different political
I
color, right? Like
I
sports
agree.
as a whole.
When I was watching this Last Dance, that idea in my head was there are so many clubs and they're playing off season and they're playing playoffs and season, right? They're
Hmm.
different things, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So they're having like around 83 games in a year or in a season, right? So so many new talents are coming in and want to play each other, and so it's really penetrated into the schooling system and all.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
but that thing cannot. Do you guys think that can happen in India? Something like that with
I think at
some other
some level
sport
it
like cricket?
does in. I think
feel
at
the
some level
same.
it does in cricket in India, right? Like for cricket there is, but yeah, the other sports it needs to be more. That's why I'm happy at some level with IPL and stuff, even though I'm a old school Test cricket guy. But by the way, have any of y'all been watching the latest series with West Indies, England,
Yeah.
England, Pakistan? I didn't watch the Pakistan wala match. I know Rahul, you tweeted about
Yeah, even I
some
haven't watched.
bowler, no? There's this spinner. I saw his
Yeah,
highlights.
Pakistan.
Yeah.
Yeah. I watched a test match. I mean, I'll take any test cricket right now,
Hmm.
uh,
I
and
fi-
especially in England.
yeah, I find sports and films are at such an intersection, where without films people feel very empty if there's not no new film
Yeah,
coming. And with sports, I
Yeah,
think that's a sense of heightened, because during the lockdown, people have been really clamped. They're like, people are
yeah,
genuinely telling me that they're really sad just because there's no fucking sports on, and they really need to let some
yeah.
energy out.
yeah. I mean, if you think about it, a lot of us in the last 10 years, at least India only, I'm
Hmm.
saying, a lot of Indians have lived life into like their year is divided into mostly two parts. It's from January to May. No, January to April or May, and then the IPL two and a
IPL.
half months. People just let their brains go and like
Yeah,
it's just 2 months of just whether you follow IPL or not is not
you
it
can't escape
changes the
it.
culture of it changes the domestic culture of this country.
Hmm.
At 8 p.m. or at 7 p.m. there is a different routine in the house for two
Hmm.
and a half or 3 months, and then there's the rest of the year. Kabhi kabhi World Cup aa jata hai, kabhi kabhi kuch aur aa jata hai, but it's always been like this. That's why this year people have had such a tough time, because now the people
Yeah.
that we see in July and August are the
Huh.
people who have not gone through the IPL in April and May. So there's so much pent up energy, pent up frustration, pent up angst, and now obviously people are waiting for it in October, and
Hmm.
also it's going to like mess with
It's
everyone's
gonna
mental
change.
cycles.
Yeah,
It's
it'll
like
be
a
very
whole
interesting
period
to see
cycle.
how people react to the IPL this year.
Yeah.
But you should
It'll
write
be
about this. This is a very interesting thing. I'm sure I'll read that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. I find our sports following culture very amusing and very fascinating at the same time,
Yeah.
because it just defines our lives. Movies and sports, we know it's a cliche,
Hmm.
but in very different ways they affect our lives, and I want to see how it changes the country on a whole when the IPL happens in October and November, because then our December and January is going to be our summer technically in our head. So we'll be like, ये problem है, weather में थोड़ा problem है. Why am I not sweating while watching the IPL? It'll be very amusing.
Plus, it'll be damn funny because it'll happen in UAE. And I would like to recommend, don't ever hold the IPL in India. I don't know why, but I feel like it really, like, because I've been to a few IPL games in Bombay, and it's just the worst. Okay, like Indian
It is
crowds.
terrible. It's
Fuck,
terrible.
man. I would rather watch it on my phone in a packed local train or something than go to a stadium
I
and
totally
watch a
agree.
game. It's
Wankhede is the
really.
worst stadium in the country. Like I can do a
It's
separate
so
podcast.
small also. I don't understand the fascination. It's so tiny. Like
It's
if
horrible. And
yeah.
they somehow, like, I don't know who constructed that stadium, who redid the stadium after 2011.
Huh.
They have somehow managed, like, it's a physics marvel of physics that they somehow managed to cut air supply at Marine Drive. It takes great skill to do that.
Nice.
Well,
I've never seen a cricket match in like
you've
live.
never. You
Don't do
must
it in
just
Bombay, dude.
don't do it. My dream is at some point to, like, go to England and have enough money to, like, go and watch a game at some good ground. Even England, Australia, anywhere where I can sit with a fucking beer. I'd like to go to a test match with a beer. Because I don't think there's any other way you should watch a test match. Like, I don't think you can't watch it in an Indian stadium. Jape,
You
I remember,
can't do. Huh.
I remember there was some joke. I don't remember who had. There was some joke where it was like कि some comedian का where कि अगर बाहर के स्टेडियम में देखो तो मतलब people are lying comfortably on the grass and all, और इंडिया में एक जाली लगाई होती है कि please stay in control. Like it's anyway. Is there any other sports documentaries you guys would like to discuss or mention that we could talk about?
I
I have
mean, yeah, sure.
go on.
No, I just have a couple of recommendations because I'm pretty sure a lot of people may not have watched this football documentary, given that football is such a popular sport. There's a football documentary made in 2014 called Next Goal Wins. It's a lovely, like a couple of years ago, basically I was writing an article about football, about the World Cup, and about how football is represented in films. So while doing my documentaries research, I came upon this very delightful documentary called Next Goal Wins. It's basically about the worst football team in the world, the lowest ranked football team in the world, called American Samoa, which is way
Right.
that side of the Pacific. And it's about their struggle to qualify for the 2014 FIFA World Cup. Like their struggle to qualify for the qualifiers, not qualify
Oh,
qualify. So
okay.
it's literally like the BAP of underdog films. Like we watch films like Chak De, we watch these films like Miracle, where we see a bunch of underdogs and we keep thinking, kaisa cliched hai. Like these characters are all cliches, the coach is a cliche. This documentary will prove that's not a cliche. All of them, every single character cannot be like it cannot. You can't believe it's real. Like, and it's amazing. Like the coach is a Dutch coach who's just come to resurrect his career. He's just doing it for time pass. Then suddenly they find inspiration. It's also the team to feature a trans player for the first time in football. So it's just an amazing, very heartwarming documentary. I was absolutely charmed by it. It's one of the best sports documentaries I've seen. People will take notice of this documentaries next year because Taika Waititi is directing the fictional version of this.
Oh,
His next film
nice. Guys, everyone watch it and then we can all be hipster and we can be
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
fuck you guys, we knew it before it became cool, okay? Like, nice. I just like to, I don't know if that part got recorded because I said it in the beginning. So I recently saw a documentary called Alphago. It's available on YouTube. In fact, there's a company called DeepMind, unke YouTube channel pe hai. So it's those of you who don't know, there's a game called Go. It's a board game. So it's not exactly a sport, but I think at some level it should count because it was very destructive to watch, So basically it's very similar to chess, but except there's something that, like, at any point in the game of Go, the number of possible moves are more than the number of stars in the sky. So it's very very intense, that game, and it's mostly played in East Asia mostly. I think China, Japan, South Korea mainly, and I think the reigning champion is from South Korea. So that game, that documentary is about the first AI software to try and beat the grandmaster equivalent of Go, and like, it is genuinely insane because that documentary follows like a set of 5 games or something that this grandmaster is having with this software. And it is literally being followed by all of South Korea, all of China, all of Japan, and everybody is waiting, and they all want this technology to get destroyed. And then they make a parallel sort of with, it's not just about this game, it's also about, because Go to them in their culture, Go is like the pinnacle of humanity in a way, in terms of thinking, right? And if a machine can beat you at it, then what is really left for humans to sort of dominate? So it's really, really cool, and it's on YouTube. Alphago it's called. So yeah, check that out.
Noted.
I guess. So
Yeah.
anything else, guys? Or
I don't have a recommendation. I have a
okay,
question.
so we can just do a recommend. Oh yeah, sorry, Himanshu, go on.
I just had a question related to Bollywood. Is that fine to ask? Or you want?
We can talk about anything, dude.
What are you guys? What are your expectations from the upcoming Kapil Dev biopic?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Rahul, I'll let you go first because I think you have the most at stake.
Yeah, but definitely. I only recently I did a very fun article about basically this is made about the 1983 World Cup India winning. I was like 5 other films cricket films that can concentrate on like different India wins across the, for me 1971 Test series, a bunch of like random series I'd put into that. So I've been looking forward to this film for a while because I've only all of us grew up basically without winning. I mean, only knowing that India had won one World Cup when we weren't born. 2011 tak rukna pada uske liye. But so I've watched a lot of this on tape because my father had taped pretty much everything of that World Cup. So I'd watched a lot of that, and I have hopes from it because there's no reason to go wrong as such because you're making such a you're sort of bringing back such a celebrated sports occasion, arguably India's greatest cricket moment. So and the cast is really good. I think Ranveer Singh is a very good choice for Kapil Dev. I'm just I don't know. It's just hard not to be cynical about the fact that it's backed by a big production house at the same time. So there are going to be a lot of compromises on that sense, like the heightened. We don't need heightened storytelling in cricket because cricket itself is theater, right? Most of the time, people don't get that, like most of the time. So I just hope I've not seen one Indian film or one Indian series that has shot cricket well, the sport well. Like hockey in Chakde was shot very well, but somehow, even though we are a country obsessed with cricket, it's like a religion here, but we don't know how to shoot the sport. We just don't know. Like you cut one ball, a bowler bowling to a batsman, you will have 8 cuts.
Yeah.
Even I don't remember Iqbal very well, but I think Iqbal also, like, it had a great story and all, but I don't think it was the best when it came to the technical.
It got the techniques right of the batsman technique, the bowler technique, but it could never like really make cricket look like a joint sport,
Right.
And a lot of people just don't know how to do it here because a lot of our actors are acting as cricketers. We are not getting cricketers who are actors. A lot of them are sort of learning on the. So I'm hoping 83 might change that. I have no hope about the cricket action itself. I'm just hoping it's better because if you ask me, some of the best cricket action I've seen was shot in Kaipoche, even though it was technically not a cricket film.
That was very well shot actually.
Some of the practice sequences, especially with the kid and Sushant Singh Rajput in the nets, that was top class, like proper cricket. You felt like you were watching 2 cricketers play against each other. So let's hope it's sort of something.
Bharat, you wanted to say something?
One of my favorite cricket, like the weirdest cricket moments in Indian film was in Dishoom. Okay, you guys.
What is Dishoom? I have not seen Dishoom. Please tell us about Dishoom.
Dishoom, there is this Virat Kohli character. Okay, I don't remember his name. Okay.
Wait, what is the film Dishoom? I don't know Dishoom. Tell me Dishoom.
Dishoom is the most outrageous film you'll ever watch. Okay, in which Virat Kohli basically gets kidnapped by these terrorists. Okay?
Wait, the Virat Kohli. They've called the character Virat Kohli.
They've called him Viraj. Okay.
That's a Virat plus Yuvraj sort of thing.
Yeah. Is the John?
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
It's played by Saqib Salim, okay, Viraj, okay. And what happens
Appropriate.
is he's basically taking a single run or something and he falls and his shoulder gets dislocated, okay. And he's like, you will have to go, like, this is retired hurt and we've lost the match. And then he's like, no sir, I can do it. And I think Mohinder Amarnath has played himself in the movie.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, Mohinder Amarnath, dude, like a legend. Okay, he's played himself, he's made a mockery of himself. I mean, Rahul was just talking about how cricketers don't become actors, but now we know.
We know. Because we saw the Ajay Jadeja and Vinod Kambli acting at some point. Vinod Kambli too in the 2000s.
Do you guys remember the show Full Toss? Do you guys remember that show Full Toss? Yeah, that was amazing. So there was 8 runs in that, and the umpire used to do this for 8 runs. Okay, it was the best shit I'd ever seen.
So what happens is, dude, this guy is like, sir, I can play, and he's like, don't be foolish, Viraj. Okay, we need you in the final, some bullshit like that. And he basically slams his shoulder into a wall. Okay, and it fixes it, and he plays the match, and he wins.
There are amazing cricket films, man, over the years. Do you guys remember V for Victory or something? The Baweja, what's the low budget Hrithik Roshan? Yeah, Harman Baweja.
They have a lot of Indian cricketers in that.
Yeah. They had a lot. They had Brett Lee also.
Australian cricketers, Brett Lee.
I would love to have been in that pitch meeting where the filmmakers are meeting all these Australian cricketers, and I'm sure the Australian cricketers would have been like, the big market in India, we'll make a film and all. They did not realize who the fuck Arman Baweja was really. I have seen that film, by the way. That film has the first ball he faces by Brett Lee. And he fucks up, okay? It's like a bouncer, so he can't take it. The second ball onwards, every ball is a 6. In that entire film, you can go back and check, okay? Every single ball after that ball is a 6. I love how also we have gone through almost an hour of talking about cricket and cricket films and stuff. We haven't mentioned Lagan, okay?
That's the whole point, I think.
But I wanted to recommend 2 films. Both are actually fiction. I don't have a documentary recommendation, but since you were talking about Alphago, there's a really funny independent film, black and white. Not black and white because it's in the black and white era. It was short, released in 2007, 2009. It's called Computer Chess. Okay. It's an indie film. I don't know, Rahul. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah. So it's basically it's about a bunch of nerds in the 1980s who have come together in a tournament to make the computer that can defeat a human at chess. Okay.
Right.
And it's basically a very funny film. It's shot in mockumentary style. So Himanshu, I think you'll like it.
Okay. I also have a trilogy of rock climbing documentaries, and I'm heavily into.
I think I know where you're going, but go on.
Go on. Yeah. It's basically Meru, the Dawn Wall, and Free Solo. Like that's a trilogy of rock climbing document, and for me that's a pinnacle of sports documentary filmmaking. Like,
right. I haven't seen the first one. What's it called? Meru.
Meru. Yeah.
How do you spell MERU?
MERU. Yeah, it's named after the mountain
we should actually talk about this one. Have you guys? I've seen Dawn Wall and I've seen Free Solo. Man, I saw Dawn Wall. And the next day I got that Mamika screening where I went for Free Solo. Oh man.
Yeah.
Dude, have you guys seen Free Solo, Bharat, Himanshu?
I'm checking it out now.
And I'm just gonna tell you guys, Free Solo is about this. Dawn Wall also is great, but Free Solo is about this guy who's climbing basically a full wall, a mountain which is basically a vertical wall, and it's one of the most dangerous climbs, and he's doing it without any rope or harness. So without any support. So like literally one misstep is death. Like there's no question about it. It's actually insane. Bharat just frozen again. Okay, Bharat's fine now. Bharat, come back to what you wanted to talk about. We couldn't hear your after Computer Chess. We didn't hear anything you said.
Yeah, so Computer Chess is a very funny sort of independent film, and it's a very alternative sort of take on the sports film, if you may. And then I mentioned it to you guys. It's fairly commercial and like it's well known. It's called The Damned United.
No one leads United, right?
Yeah. I love that movie because it's the antithesis of underdog.
That's an excellent.
Yeah, it basically talks about this very brief period in which this sort of an asshole guy takes over Leeds United and absolutely trashes it. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's I think it's made also, I forget the director's name, who it is. It's some famous guy who made a famous film
Yeah.
later. He has made, so, but yeah, definitely check it out because it's the antithesis of of sports film. Yeah.
Right. Nice. Okay, I guess that's the end of the episode. I would again recommendation. I think it was AlphaGo, Computer Chess, Bharat the Damned United,
Computer chess.
Rahul recommended
Next goal wins and the trilogy of Rock Lemon.
right, which is Meru, Dawnwall, and Free Solo. I haven't seen Meru yet, but I would also very highly recommend Dawnwall and Free Solo. In fact, Bharat Amang should check it out. I want to talk to you guys about this one also. So yeah, this was a really fun conversation, guys. So thank you guys. Thank you, Rahul, for like joining us.
Thanks a lot. It was
this
good
week.
fun.
Yeah. All right. See you guys next week. Bye bye.
Thanks.